You know where I'm not filming today? The New Jersey Pine Barrens. You know what else wasn't filmed in the New Jersey Pine Barrens? The Pine Barrens episode. Welcome to Sopranos Season 3 Random Thoughts. Enough of you have enjoyed my Random Thoughts for Season 2 video that, hey, why not keep going to Season 3? So, regarding the Pine Barrens episode, I learned that from the Talking Sopranos event I attended the other year, that apparently all the famous scenes where Chris and Paulie are running around the woods together, that was not shot in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And, you know, every time I watch now, I can't help but notice that those aren't all pine trees around them, like it would be normally in the Pine Barrens. It's just, you know, everything is barren but pine. Only pine trees are there. That was apparently because one of the local New Jersey politicians at the time felt that the Sopranos show was giving Italian Americans a bad name, a bad look. It was feeding into negative stereotypes. So he banned the show from getting a permit to film in the Pine Barrens. And then, well, it turns out soon after, that politician was then in trouble with the law for some money embezzling or some kind of money scandal. As I'm filming today, hopefully the noises from the woods aren't too loud. Got some birds having a turf war over there. Got one of the New Jersey drones flying overhead, so who knows? Hopefully I come out nice and clear on this. Either way, enough of me blabbing. Let's get into Season 3 Random Thoughts. Why not start with the random section? And why not start with one of the most random quotes from Paulie Walnuts?
How about that fucking stampede in Zimbabwe?
On one level, it's funny enough to hear Paulie talking about a stampede in Zimbabwe. On another level, I was like, what the hell is he talking about? So I Googled it, and I set the Google time for the results to be way back when the show episode was filmed, and it turns out that there actually was a stampede in Zimbabwe at that time that killed 12 people. Now, I have no idea what this was about. I thought it was like an animal stampede or something, but no, it turns out it was a stampede of soccer fans who were fleeing a stadium after police started firing tear gas into the crowds because some rowdy fans were throwing bottles and other crap into the field. The more you know. At the very beginning of Season 3, when the FBI guys are listening in on the Soprano household and they have their secret wiretap devices, they say they can only listen for 40 seconds at a time. That reminds me of another popular HBO show, The Wire, where they can only listen up to a certain amount of time if the call was deemed non-pertinent. There was a scene in Season 1 when two of the more boneheaded police were just listening to these two people just basically like have phone sex because they thought it was funny. But then another guy comes in and is like, hey, if this has nothing to do with the case, you can't listen to that. Just reminded me of that. They came out around the same time, so I thought that was kind of interesting. In a Season 3 episode where Tony's mom dies, I think it's interesting that at the end of the episode, he's watching a movie on TV, and that particular part of the movie shows a mom or motherly figure. I don't know what's going on in the movie at that time. Of course, he's crying on one level because his mom died, but on another, I wonder if subconsciously he's remembering back to the time that when he almost smothered his mom with the pillow in that hospital at the end of Season 1, and on the TV there's this like motherly figure fluffing a pillow like he was doing before he planned on smothering his mom. Who knows? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. I always thought that this particularly not flattering angle of Agent Harris reminded me of Mike from Red Letter Media. I also like how in the sit-down scene where Tony tries to talk some sense into Jackie Jr., Jackie walks in looking like some Italian-American Neo from The Matrix.
Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
It's my own little fan theory that after Tony and Furio intimidated Dr. Kennedy on the golf course for playing his stupid fucking game, then he got so scared of living in New Jersey that he then fled to New Mexico and continued his medical practice, and then was consulting Walter White for his cancer treatment in Breaking Bad. It's another little connection between these two shows. Same actor, same role, playing a doctor, so who knows? Probably not the same character, but he may have changed his name. I don't know. In the background of this scene where Meadow, Noah, and the crazy roommate are walking through Union Square Park, you can see these big numbers on the side of this building. This is a large art installation that was completed recently at the time of the episode's filming called the Metronome. In the early 2000s, which is what we're looking at in the show now, the clock was really just a clock telling the time of day, but in a rather confusing way. It's still there today, and nowadays the counter has been modified to be a countdown for Earth's lifespan to bring awareness to climate change or something like that. Also in the episode where Tony's mom dies, I like this brief little shot where the mob guys are here, but not really watching the TV, just kind of waiting impatiently for Tony to get in. And meanwhile, AJ is eating ice cream, not seeming to care about anything, just watching TV. Doesn't really mind the fact that his grandma just died. I mean, you know, he's an oblivious teenager. They all just seem so uninterested. And of course, from the same episode, there's a great little Furio quote here.
This is a survivor show. Somebody should find the winner. stick a pistol in the face and say, "You're not gonna survive this unless you give me 25% of that fucking $1 million."
This man doesn't say much, but when he does, he means every word. Also, same episode, I really like the shot of Furio, Chris, and Adriana getting as high as they can so they can make it through these long family events. I just think that's hilarious. Also, that face Furio's making at the beginning of the shot. It's like really eager to take a hit on that thing. One thing I like about The Sopranos in general is that, you know, having grown up around the time when the show was popular, there's a lot of just early 2000s, late 90s nostalgia throughout the show. One of my favorite pieces of early 2000s nostalgia from The Sopranos show is the Big Mouth Billy Bass that makes a couple appearances in season 3. This is, you know, that stupid little toy that everyone bought at like Walgreens or something for a Christmas gift when you couldn't think of anything else. They're funny for like 10 seconds and then that's it. But I like how every time people are watching it in the show, they find it way too funny. Like the whole Soprano family is in stitches over this thing. Chris just starts laughing.
That is hilarious. What a riot.
Okay, so for the next section, let's talk about AJ and Meadow. This was mentioned in the recent documentary called Wise Guy about David Chase, but I like this little line from AJ in season 3, and this is another possible hint at the end of the show. I don't know if they planned this or not, but it's interesting looking at the show in retrospect.
I don't know.
Death.
I thought black was death. I thought black was death.
Obviously, the show was just trying to show how dumb AJ was here in this scene, but I just think it's hilarious every time I watch it that he doesn't know what gutters are.
You were going to clean the gutters.
What gutters?
On the roof.
Where?
On the edge. The things that collect the water.
I don't know what you mean.
Don't get smart with me.
I don't know.
The drain pipes for the rain.
Another one for AJ, I like this brief but awkward interaction between him and Adriana. This may be the only time they ever talk in the whole show.
Cheerleaders, any hotties, huh?
There's no cheerleaders for freshman ball.
So I was trying to identify some of the posters of bands and TV shows or whatever was on the wall of Meadow's dorm room in the city, and some were very obvious, like there's that NSYNC one, and some were more obscure, like this album I never heard of, the Sons of the Pioneers, whoever that is. But the one I couldn't find much information about is on this poster that's in a lot of shots that just says M5. Who was this M5 band? And there's an Amazon link to an album which looks like it's a greatest hits for a group called Maryland 5. But when you click on the artist page for more info, nothing shows up. So if I had to guess, this is a poster from some local group that some set designer found in a local record store or something, and they were just trying to fill space on the set wall. Or like maybe it's a friend or relative of someone in the shoot and said, hey, stick my poster in the show. I don't know. If you know who this band is, let me know. I really have no idea. Next section is filming and editing. I like to talk a lot about strange editing choices, particularly in the Sopranos show. And this one isn't like a huge mistake or anything. It's more of just an odd choice, this reverse shot. It's not bad or wrong or anything. You just never really see any more reversed things going on during the show. So speaking of odd editing, this next one isn't reversed, but it is in slow motion. The slow motion shots of Tony and this other dad watching the football game that AJ is playing in, when they start cheering, they look like a bunch of crazed gorillas, like someone just threw a banana into the cage and they're fighting over it. Obviously, the show has a lot of symbolism throughout it, and in particular, some people have pointed out that there's a juxtaposition often of water and death. So, like Mikey Palmise, when he died, he fell in the puddle, or Pussy was thrown into the ocean. Or when Eugene hung himself, he was like holding a shell and thinking about going to Florida with his family. Or a sprinkler system. In the same episode where Tony's mom died, right before he goes in and his family tells him that his mom died, he's outside adjusting a sprinkler for his garden. So another instance of that right there. One of the ways the show makes it clear to us that Tony sees a connection between the Bing dancer Tracy and his daughter Meadow is that in Tracy's episode there are several juxtaposition shots that go from Tracy to Meadow or Meadow to Tracy. Some example of these include... Speaking of editing, in the third season, they do just one too many of these type of, hey, remember this type of cuts for my liking. Not a big deal. It's just, you know, they do one cut reminding, hey, remember when last season we threw Big Pussy in the ocean? And then they do it again. And I think they do it a third time. I'm like, yeah, I get it. It wasn't that many episodes ago. The scene where Ralphie has a sit down with Tony in this restaurant always stuck out to me because I really liked the subtle way that it's framed and filmed. Kind of makes me think of an old western showdown or something like that. Think of this restaurant as a saloon. Ralphie moseys on in through the flapping doors and then they pat him down for his 6 shooters. Famously from the pilot episode, ducks are a big symbol for the show. They make a couple other random references to ducks and waterfowl throughout the show. If you're paying attention, you might catch one or two when they're watching the TV broadcast about the Esplanade development, and the broadcast quickly cuts to show some ducks hanging out in the water. Why? I don't know. Another duck reference. They didn't have to cut to that. Just showing some ducks. Okay, speaking of strange edits, let's talk about the scene where Vito shoots Jackie Jr. for a second. It starts like they just told Jackie, okay, just walk in that direction. He didn't know what he was doing or why he's walking there, just kind of walking awkwardly down the hill. And Jackie must really be the dumbest character on the show, because how in the world did he not see Vito waiting for him? There's like, where was he hiding? Why does that gun look comically small in Vito's hand? And why doesn't it recoil at all? And I like how the shot where Jackie's body falls in the snow, if you start on the very first frame of that shot, obviously he didn't like plummet in the snow. He was just resting on his knees and fell over with the blood already spattered on there. It's just a little awkwardly done, the scene. Next section, I want to talk about music. So, I always like the clever mashup of Every Breath You Take by The Police and the Peter Gunn theme song in the first episode of this season. While these songs aren't exactly the same, I guess the BPM or the beats per minute and the melodies for each song were similar enough. The Peter Gunn theme song is, well, Peter Gunn is an old detective show, and we're watching the FBI do some detective work, doing some police work. And the other reason is that think of the lyrics to Every Breath You Take. This little tidbit isn't really obscure or anything, and a lot of people know this at this point, but if you don't, I'll just mention it. In the Telltale Moozadell episode, that is Lady Gaga, just doing a early acting role as just some extra in this random show no one's heard about. The band that made that super catchy song, Stacy's Mom, actually took their name from this particular store where Tony is shopping called the Fountains of Wayne. Unfortunately, that store is no longer around, and also unfortunately, I think the main guy from Stacy's Mom died of COVID or something, so that's pretty sad. I never realized this until I was putting this video together, but the guitar Janice is terribly playing the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction riff on is not a cheapo beginner guitar as you would expect for her skill level, but it is in fact a genuine Fender Stratocaster. And in fact, it's a Eric Clapton signature Strat model from the early 2000s. Probably cost a couple $1,000 back then, even more nowadays with inflation. Really does say something about Janice's character. I'm gonna start learning my first riffs. Yeah, let's buy a $3,000 guitar to learn riffs on. Yeah, sure. Speaking of guitars, here's another Breaking Bad reference. Remember early in Breaking Bad, I think it's that guy Elliot at his big birthday bash, he gets an Eric Clapton signature guitar.
It's a Stratocaster.
Not just any Strat. That's one of Clapton's.
So in Season Thoughts Random 2, I got way too focused on the D-Girl episode. So this Random Thoughts video, I want to get way too focused on another random episode, which is the Telltale Moozadell. I really like this episode. It might be my favorite in the season. You know, I know Pine Barrens is here too. I mean, they're probably on par with me. This one isn't as memorable and iconic as Pine Barrens. However, there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on. This was written by Michael Imperioli, which I think is pretty cool. During the episode when AJ and his friends' pool shenanigans are being investigated and they find the half-eaten pizza at the pool, and then he says, oh, I know where this came from, and then the cops go question the pizza store owner. All that dialogue is done in a very particular way.
It's a custom job.
How's that, sir?
Double meatball, pepperoni, sausage, peppers, onions, extra mozzarella.
This pie fit a pattern?
Come again, officer?
Any customers order this combo on a regular basis?
Only one I know.
Who's that?
I'd rather not say.
And what that's referencing is this old 50s detective crime show called Dragnet, which I've never seen, but the way they're talking is kind of like how they talk in old crime shows. So I just thought that was interesting. Michael Imperioli is just trying to show that he's a very knowledgeable, astute student of film. Yes, very good, Michael. Okay, like in the Sopranos Season 2 Random Thoughts video, I've got to include another incredible Pauly quote from this episode.
Amazing thing about snakes is that they reproduce spontaneously. That's why somebody you don't trust, you call a snake. How can you trust a guy who can literally go fuck themselves? Don't you think that expression will come from the Adam and Eve story? Snakes were fucking themselves long before Adam and Eve showed up, T.
So not only is this one of my favorite Pauly quotes, but this quote ends up actually being a bit of clever writing, because later in the episode, when Tony and Gloria are fooling around in the zoo's snake exhibition, the shot is set up to show elements of the Adam and Eve story. We've got a man and a woman in a garden/jungle setting, and we've got a snake, which was, you know, the devil in that story, and there's red, which references the apple and temptation and all that. So speaking of the zoo scene, this is where we get the first instance of Gloria saying, oh, poor you.
Between the Buddhism and talk about the family. for you.
reminding him of his mom, but he doesn't really know it yet. Huh? What? You know, something's off, but he doesn't know it yet. Also, speaking of the zoo scene, there's a really quick little shot that I found interesting.
Malocchio.
So this Malocchio combined with this hand thing is an old world Italian thing. The purpose of this hand gesture is an Italian superstition meant to act as horns to ward off evil when someone is giving you the evil eye. Maybe like devil horns or bull horns, like poke someone's eye out with that. I don't know. What is this, like 2000? This could be Harambe's dad. Be nice to him. Quick side note too, so this hand gesture is obviously also used in hard rock and heavy metal culture, and it was first popularized by Ronnie James Dio, where he learned it from his old school Italian grandmas. So started as an old school Italian thing, now is like, yeah, heavy metal.
I'm of Italian extraction, and my grandmother, my grandfather, on both sides of both my mother's and father's side, came to America from Italy, and they had superstitions. It was called the Maloik. Someone was giving us the evil eye, so she's giving it protection against the evil eye. Or you can give someone the evil eye too. So invent it, no, but perfect it and make it important, yes.
Here's another little piece of early 2000s culture and nostalgia, something I really like about the show. But I like how Carmela is reading one of those sharper image magazines here. You remember those things? You'd always find them in airports or something. Do they still have those? I haven't seen one in a long time. Also, speaking of the Telltale Moozadell and early 2000s nostalgia for me, there's a scene in this episode where AJ gives Carmela for her birthday a DVD of The Matrix, and that was actually the first DVD that I ever had. And I just think it's funny in this episode too that no one questions why Ralphie is on the cover. Maybe he doesn't have the wig on there? Not sure. Also in this episode, Tony says this.
She should be at the Museum of Modern Art in her free time.
Oh, you'd rather have a look at the pictures of soup cans instead of being close to home.
So, that's about all I've got for today. If enough people like this, comment on it, share it, whatever. I'll do random thoughts for season 4. So if you do enjoy this, let me know. Once again, thank you, and time to make the long trek home.